Hey everybody, this is Jolly and welcome back to my channel. And I am here with week 3 of the Seek, Gather, Create challenge. Um, excuse me. So in case you haven't seen my previous couple of videos, so Seek, Gather, Create is a twice a year challenge hosted by Laura D. Dennison, Tina Hoyce, and Lisa Goddard, primarily over on Instagram. It's hosted in February and August, and each week they provide a list of 4 items to seek in your stash, to gather, and then to create anything you want with them. So the first week for the August edition, August 2026 edition, I made an altered jar lid kind of ornament situation. Um, Last week I went a little different and I ended up doing an altered toilet paper roll seed box. And so this week we'll see where I end up, although I'm starting to get some ideas in mind. So uh, for this week, the items are a cluster, something sealed, a grid, and blue green. I think we're starting to see a pattern in terms of the greens. Week 1 was dark green. Week 2 was light green. So I have sought and I have gathered, and I have probably gathered way too much. I've gathered too close to the sun, you could say. Um, but yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I think, first of all, for my substrate, I think I'm going to return to the altered jar lid. I really liked that format. So I'm thinking do an altered jar lid, put something on the back, and then inside have the cluster and the something sealed. And this one I'm also thinking if I can figure out the um, punching into the side with the items and tools I have available to me. Um, I'd like to also, I think, potentially add a dangle to this one, which would be just something a little fun and different. And so, yeah, so I think I'm going back to the altered jar lid for this week. And obviously, this is just um, a lid from a jar of jam that I have in my stash. And then, so in terms of items, let's start with the blue green. So I think that's part of why, excuse me, um, why I have so many things gathered, because teals and turquoise and blue greens are basically pretty much my favorite color. So I have a lot of them. I have a lot of things in those areas. And so I've gone ahead and I've pulled some different mediums just to have. And so this is probably one of my all-time favorite acrylic inks, the Phthalo Turquoise, but from De La Rowney. I love this stuff. I use it a lot, and actually, what I like to do with all my acrylic inks is I turn them into acrylic sprays. I just mix them with um, distilled water to make a little spray. So I've got that. I've also got another one of these golden so flat paints that I used last week, and this one's in a cobalt teal. And then for ink, I've got I've got this archival ink from Ranger in Paradise Teal, which is one of my favorite inks. And then I also just got this. I got this as a sort of extra freebie from Kate over at Inked Paper Art with one of my orders. And I've actually, this is the first distressed oxide pad that I've ever owned. And it's in Salvage Patina. And then I also have the Salvage Patina spray. And these I think I would consider this on the blue green spectrum and probably more on the green, obviously. I also have the spray in peacock feathers, but when that sprays, that I find that to be more true blue blue-green, and I think, the emphasis is on the green in this case. So I'm not worried about teal or the blue-green prompt 4 at all. Then prompt number 3, so I guess we'll work backwards, is a grid. So I've got my favorite, immediately thought of one of my favorite items, which is this is drywall repair tape. You can take this out, you can paint on it. So I'll probably paint this with one of these paints to make basically a teal grid netting, so to speak. So I've got that, but then I also, with grid, immediately thought of ledger paper. And so I've got, this is a piece of a vintage ledger that obviously hasn't really been written on much. This is from Patty Lang at Sacramento's. And on the other side, so this is one of the ones where she makes printables and then prints them on vintage ledger page. And so we've got some of this, and then this side is obviously themed around peacocks. And I think that's going to end up inspiring my entire make. So we've got this great image of the peacock. So I'm thinking potentially for like the back is cutting, cutting this part of the paper out and using that as maybe the back of this. And then potentially using this, a circle cut out of the just plain grid, sprayed with one of the sprays, or watercolored as sort of the background of the piece. So those will be my grid. So I think I'll get grid a couple ways. And then something sealed. So I have a few options for that. I immediately thought of jars. And I have this very grungy vintage jar, but I think it's going to be too big, too chunky for this. But instead, I have these tiny little jars that I've had for a long time. Probably got them from Patty at Sacramento's. But I think one or two of these, especially these tiny ones, would fit perfectly in our jar lid. And I'm wondering, whether they've already got some little pieces in them. I'm thinking, considering, I should say, putting, so some of the clay I used in last week's make. So basically, if you didn't see that, I take the little packets of the little clay beads that they put in like clothing when they ship it to keep things dry. And I use that for texture in my make last week, but I was thinking about seeing if I could paint or alcohol ink those clay little pieces and then maybe fill a couple of these, if I could get the cork out, filling them with some of those to almost look like colored sand or colored stones. So I think that's going to be my something sealed. And then lastly is a cluster. And when I saw a cluster, my heart kind of sank, only because, so I just a couple weeks ago did sort of, I guess, a purge or a clean out and a rearrange of my art supplies and all my art items. And I threw away a big stash, I know, cover your ears, of my scraps, just because they were piling up and I wasn't using them fast enough. I used some to make little master boards on index cards, but they were kind of just stressing me out, so I got rid of them. So now, of course, that I have a project, I've of course seen there are about a million videos on YouTube of especially junk journalers making clusters for junk journals, but since I don't make junk journals, I haven't really made many clusters myself. But I went through my stash and obviously I was able to find something. So I mostly just went looking for smaller things that I could use in a cluster. And I found plenty, as you can see. So I've got a scrap This is Karen Elaine origami paper. I've got a few pieces of um, Florentine paper that I get from Kate over at Ink Paper Art. And so since I'm thinking about a um, peacock theme, obviously this paper stuck out to me. So um, yeah, I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I might, maybe this will be the interior of the lid. I could see that. I think that would be pretty. And then we'll still use the picture of the peacock with the grid on the back, and I'll still planning to use some of the drywall repair tape in the cluster so that we'll still hit grid and something. But yeah, these were different pieces of the Italian Florentine paper that I have some scraps that are in this kind of color family. I found, so this was a scrap of a masterboard that I used in another project. Again, this is maybe too on the blue side, but I was just pulling things. And then this is what I was hoping I would find, is this is a page that I had, I believe I used the Dollar Rowney on it, just to sort of dye it, because then I used it to cut circles for a project. Then I've got this sort of vintage light green paper. So yeah, just pulled a bunch of options. I've got, again, some more sort of grid-like paper if I need it. I've got an old part of an envelope. I even pulled, before I thought about the peacock roll, I have these German scrap pieces that I, again, got from Kate at Ink Paper Art. And some of these have like blue-green, and there's a lot. I kind of consolidated them all in this. So I can go through this. There might be a focal point, although I don't think we'll be hurting for focal points. And then I have from Tim Holtz. So as I said, this colorway is sort of my favorite. So Tim has brought out the palette collection of papers this year, and the only one I felt compelled to purchase was the teal color. And I even bought it in fabric, even though I work with fabric very infrequently. So I've got those as options. So I've got plenty of options there. And then in terms of like paper bases, again, some tickets, some stamps. I pulled, this is actually, so these are just some random circles that I had, the circles that I just showed you. I had some leftover ones. I don't know if I'll incorporate those in any way, but they're an option. And then again, pulled some stamps that I thought might have some blue-green stamps in these packs. We've got this lace that's kind of blue-green in color. So yeah, I've got plenty. And then I pulled, I've got some watch faces that, while not blue-green, could easily be worked into a cluster. So plus, there's lots more out there that I could work into a cluster that I didn't pull just for the video. So I've got plenty to work with. I think the biggest challenge will be actually narrowing it down. And most of my work, I like to have a theme. So I'm going to try to keep the peacock theme in mind. And maybe that will help me sort of limit. So yeah. So also, again, my idea is altered jar lid. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably use white gesso the back of this, as well as the inside, and then probably paint it either with the cobalt teal or the phthalo turquoise. And then again, I'm thinking the head of the peacock on the back, and then inside, covering the inside, and then I'm thinking the cluster. I'll make the cluster, and I will include it as like the center of this, maybe raised up so that it stands up. And then either just include the bottles in here, or if I could think of a way, potentially maybe even if I wanted to go with one of the bigger bottles, hang it from the piece, which now that I'm thinking about it, might actually really work because I have, oh, I can't remember the name of them right now, but basically they're the little pieces that you basically screw into the top and gives like an eye hole. And then you can hang it from a bowl pin or tie something on it. Um, so yeah, so maybe that'll actually be my dangly bit um, that I incorporate. So, and then of course I have Tim Holtz paper dolls and words that I'll probably incorporate. But that's where my thinking is going. And so I am going to clear all this off, and then I'm going to come back, and I think I'm going to start again with altering the jar lid, and I'll bring you along for the ride. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back, and it's actually it's actually a full day later from when I was last talking to you. I sort of got wrapped up in other things, and now I'm back, and I can't actually remember if I mentioned last time or at the beginning of the video, but part of the inspiration was actually this twinchie I made. So if you haven't seen my videos about the 100-day project, I did the 100-day project for the first time this year, which is basically where you pick something creative and do it every day for 100 days in a row. And I chose to make mixed media twinchies, um, which are 2-inch by 2-inch squares. And I came up with hundreds of just like random prompt words, and I used a random number generator to create to pick a prompt and then create a twinchie on that theme. And so this was day 66, and the theme was feather. And I used, this is a woman from one of my vintage cabinet cards that I scanned and then cut out. And then she's glossy because I actually used packing tape over her, which is a tip Tim Holt shared on one of his lives. And used again that same Florentine paper in the background, and gave her a little feather. Was kind of going for like a 20s esque kind of flapper look. And then I had this gold, I don't even know what you call it, I guess trim or border, that came in a like a mystery box. It's not something I would normally buy, but it reminded me that I have it, and I think it would be nice to kind of put around either the lip here or along the edge of the jar lid. And so, but basically, I made 100 of these twinchies, and they're just kind of sitting in a. I've just got them in a container on my desk, and they're just kind of sitting there. So I think actually I want this to be the focal point of this make. And so I think this will be sort of the top of my cluster, and then my idea is I'm going to build the cluster around it, and prop this up and have this be the focal point of my cluster. So yeah, that's my plan for now. And then, but first I'm going to get some prep done. So I'm going to put this out of the way so I don't ruin it in any way. So yeah, so I am going to show you how I do this. I paint this drywall repair tape that I mentioned last time, and I mean it's very simple. It's not exactly a complicated process, but I know I learned from Erin over at EB Mixed Media here on YouTube, so you can go check out her video. She is the one who introduced. I know a lot of people use this, but she's the one who introduced me to it. And I'm just going to show you how I make it or how I paint it. And then I'm also going to gesso um, my lid to prep it to paint it. So again, I've got these two colors and they're very similar. Um, I'm leaning toward the Phthalo Turquoise because I feel like it has a little bit more green in it. It's showing up very blue. This is the mix. Then the blue cobalt. So, but I'm gonna try both on the tape, um, and then we can decide because I am concerned that this is veering more blue, but I think I'm gonna use some more green on the inside, so it doesn't bother me if the outside is um, a little more blue. So, um, but yeah. So anyway, I'm just gonna walk you through, and I just have again, this is my artist board. It's just like a big clipboard that I just kind of use, and I've got some parchment paper on to protect it. So actually, let me start with the gesso, and I meant to pull out. I could just use the parchment, um, which I might do if I don't find the thing oh, there we go. So I'd probably just be fine using the parchment, but I've also got this palette paper, which clearly I've used a similarly colored paint recently, or not recently, but the last time I used this. And actually, this could be torn up and used in our cluster, so that's a nice find. But yeah, I'm going to start with the gesso just to give that some time to dry. And this is just the Liquitex Basic white gesso. So yeah, so I hope everyone's doing well. And I think I'm going to pounce this on. I'm going to try using the sponge. These are just cheap makeup sponges that I get on Amazon. I'm gonna try pouncing it on first because I like the texture. We'll see how the coverage goes. Obviously, that's not giving me great coverage at the moment, so um, I'll definitely be doing a couple layers. But I think I do like the texture, and honestly, very little of this I think will show because, as I said, I think I'm gonna fill in this circle, and I even brought gloves to try to keep my hands from getting too covered in paint, but you know what? That's part of the fun, right? So, so that'll be coat one. I'll let that dry a second, and then so let's see a little more gesso, and then so yeah, so the I don't always gesso the tape, um, especially so using the So Flat, the acrylic So Flat paint. That paint is almost gesso-esque in terms of how matte and like flat it is. Um, but with the acrylic ink, it's obviously very fluid, and I have noticed sometimes in the past that it does get a little. It sometimes doesn't want to stick because you can see, this is a very like this is plasticky. This probably is plastic, and the the fluid nature of the acrylic ink makes it often not want to stick very well. So I am just going to go ahead and gesso this first. So that's going to be the one that I put the um, acrylic ink on. And then this is, yeah, this is about as, complicated as this process gets. One thing I have learned is, especially when I'm working on the parchment like this, is, and I like using the sponge because you get it, it gets it, it could be a little uneven, which I think adds something nice, but is to pick this up before it's fully dry because um, as it dries, it'll on the parchment. There's if there's paint still in the squares, it'll pull up, and then you won't get the nice grid, as nice a grid again. So it's just a little thing, but yeah, I'll let this dry. But there you go. Now we have a cobalt teal blue lagoon. Oh no, I guess that's French blue lagoon. Cobalt teal. And actually, when that's on, it does look a little greener. So that's interesting. And then whoop, we'll see. Yeah, this needs, I did not plug in my heat tool, and you all don't want to hear my heat tool going anyway. So I will, let's see. Are we thinking this might be dry enough? I don't think it needs to be perfectly dry. I might regret that in a moment, but yeah, let's give this a go. See how we go. And so, as I mentioned, this is one of my favorite acrylic inks of all time. And just need a very little. So you can see, I don't know, that feels a little more on the green side of things. And so I'm actually just gonna, this is my little thing, just to get as much as I can out of these makeup sponges. Um, and we'll just put that on. Again, it probably would have been better if I had any kind of patience and waited for the gesso to dry, but that's okay. I like that it's going to have kind of a mottled look, an inconsistent look. And again, we're just going to use this as part of the cluster. So as part of our cluster, so you're not even going to see, this is going to be for little pieces sticking out from behind our focal point. So you're not even really going to see too much, but so that's where you go. And so, yeah, so I think you can see, I feel like there's a little more green in this. Again, they're almost identical. So I'm not sure it matters, but I do think I want to, after I just, so I think I want to use the acrylic ink on the tin itself. So yeah, you don't need to see me. You don't need to sit here and literally watch gesso dry. So I'm going to apply a couple more coats to the tin, and then I'm also probably going to apply the acrylic ink and get that ready to go. And then I'll be back. Alrighty, I'm back. And as you can see, I have painted the jar lid. And again, I didn't spend a lot of time in the centers because that's going to get all covered up. Um, but yeah, and I at least for the outside, for the inside, I did with the brush, but for the outside, I did use that makeup sponge, and you can see there's kind of a nice texture going on. And then I actually just took this outside and gave it a quick hit with this Americana uh, matte acrylic sealer. In retrospect, I probably should have waited until I finished at least the back of it. But that's okay. I can take it and hit it again if I want to after this next part. And yeah, so let's see. What are my next? So the next step is I want to start thinking actually about the back. And yeah, I think this is a good, in real life, it's a little more green, the blue green. It's coming a bit more blue. Um, but they didn't, the rule of the challenge didn't say what degree of, of blue green, just that it was blue green. So what I want to do is actually figure out the back first. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to cover this inner circle with paper. And I had showed you already, this is a Patty print from Patty Lang at Sacred Mementos. And then for this ridge here, and I forgot to pull it out, so just give me 1 second. Oh, and this is the trim. Oh, well, apparently it was $7.99. But again, this came in a mystery box, but and of course I'm not going to be able to get it out now. Oh, or maybe, close enough. This is Hunky Dory Diamond Sparkles. Again, this just came in a mystery box that I got of art supplies. And then, so what sorry, I am digging through my stuff again. So what I want to do for this ridge here, which will basically frame the piece of paper, I've got these Inka Gold, and I've got them in 3 colors. I've got a gold, a silver, and a copper. And I'm very torn because I really like copper with this color. I think that they complement each other really well. However, this little diamond trim and the Florentine paper both have gold in them. So I think I will fight my love of of copper and stick with the gold and use the Inka Gold. And this is the old gold color of Inka Gold. So first I'm going to work on cutting out the piece of paper both for the inside and the outside. And to do that, I'm going to use probably the tool I use the most, like dollar for dollar, in my projects, which is this very cheap stencil that I got on Amazon. It's very basic. It's just a bunch of circles, but it's super. I use it a lot. I have some circle punches, but they're in limited sizes and they're all very small sizes. So it's really nice to have this. So what I like to do is I like to take the jar, and I did this too with my first project for this challenge, and try to line up what I think is the closest in size circle, which I think for this will be this. And then you can always trim, and then for the inside, I want something that covers pretty much the whole inside. So I think that's gonna be, that one's too big. So yeah, so I think I'm gonna go up to this size for the inner and this end. And so what I really like about having this too is that I can use this as an aperture to basically test out what the paper will look like. So I've got a couple of choices here. So one is to use like the head of the peacock. However, this obviously goes right up to the edge, although I could come in. We could lose a little of that. So that's one option. But I was also thinking if I could just do this, like so there are these smaller peacocks as well. And we could do and just feature the whole peacock. And the other thing with using this is that we get more of the grid. Remember, our prompt is the grid. A third option could be just to do the peacock feathers themselves, and then you still get the grid, which I actually kind of like that. Now, that wasn't even really, that was just kind of a throwaway thought, but I kind of like that actually. Okay, so I think for me, it's between this. This I like having the bird. I wish I wish this other branch was not so close, and also that the edge of the paper wasn't right there. We've got this one down here, but I think we run the same with like running into. And then again, we've got the head, but we'd have to cut off some of the. I don't know. Okay, you know what? Let me cut out both of them, and then I can test them out and see what I think. So I've just got a pencil. So we've got that. And we've got this. I do miss having the text here. Oh, I could do something like that. That's not terrible. I miss the. I like the text and the numbers up top here. Sorry that keeps going in and out of focus. Let me just take a look at this too. It's obviously very close to the edge, so I'll have to be careful there. Okay, so we've got 3 options, and then for the inside, I'll just use whatever scrap I have left. I'll use this circle. I'm just going to get a piece of this, and then we're going to alter it a bit, and that'll be our grid. So I'm going to go cut these out off camera, and I will be right back. Okay, I have cut my circles, and I think I'm going to actually end up going with this one. So again, I like the writing. I like all of that, but I think what I ultimately am going to do, and I do kind of like how light it is, but what I think I'm ultimately going to do on the back probably is add a sentiment. And so I think this more of like patterned background rather than having more focal points will work really well with that. So I think I'm gonna go, and then so I also just I showed it previously. Oh, here it is. I just inked the edge of this with this Paradise Teal archival ink from Ranger. So I actually really like how those colors go together. And then for the inside, I went ahead and cut this bigger circle, and I think that fits pretty well in there. And so I had mentioned I had something I wanted to do to see if we could bring out a little more of the green in the blue green. And my thought is basically to use some of this spray stain, which that's not looking very green, but um, this is again the salvage patina. Or patina, as our friends across the pond say, which I think sounds so much classier. I'm just drawing off a paintbrush here. So I just wanted to give a little test to see how it'll look, because this paper obviously is already aged and kind of yellowed. So I have a little scrap here, but I was thinking I would just kind of, and since this is already yellowed, I actually really like that. And I think it would bring out a little more of the green in the blue green. Okay, I do like that. So what I'm going to do before you see me again, which will just be in a second for you, but who knows how long it'll take for me, is I'm going to use the Inka Gold, try very hard just to get it just on this upper lip sort of rim situation. But I want to do that. That's why I want to do that first, so that if it does get in, we'll cover it with the piece of paper and won't have to worry about it. I can always, again, touch up if I get anything on the sides. I am going to apply the spray stain. I like how that's drying. It's drying a little more subtle. To this round of paper, I'm going to glue this in here and this into the inside. And then I think the next thing we need to tackle will be our cluster. Oh, and actually also I'm going to try, I keep forgetting to do it. At each step I keep saying, oh, I need to remember to do. I'm going to try Hope from Crafty Hope on the last altar jar I did had recommended. I'm going to try to put a hole in both the top and the bottom. And it's important to do that now if I want things. So if I want this to be directional, it'll be good to know where the top and bottom is so that I can line up the grid similarly. So, and I'm going to try to do it with just, I don't really have tools for that, appropriate for that. So, but Hope had suggested just using a nail and a hammer. And I don't need a big, because I think the string I'm going to use is very thin. And then I think on the bottom, I'm probably just going to use this little twist. And I think I just need, yeah, I don't think I need very big holes. So I'm hoping that'll work. But yeah, but I'm going to go and attempt to do all that. And then I will be back with you. Hey everybody, I am back just real quick because I wanted to show you where we're at and I had some success. So for the holes, I did try the hammer and the nail, had no success with that. But I do recall seeing, I believe it was a G Kerr video where she was making altered jar lid ornaments and she used her crocodile. And so I was like, why not? Let's give it a shot. And I used the smallest hole and it worked perfectly. So for the top one, I ended up doing 2 overlapping, just in case I wanted to use a bigger ribbon or string or whatnot for the hanger. And then for this ridge, I use the old gold, Inka Gold paste, which is kind of like rub and buff. So you put it on, let it dry, and then buff it with like a paper towel. And then I glued this in and I love how this looks. I'm really glad I went with this part. And then I think it's going to be a perfect base for, again, if I'm going to probably use a quote or some sentiment to put here. And I think it'll be the perfect base for that. And then on the inside, really like how this came out too. So I just took a circle of the vintage ledger and I painted it with the Distress Salvage patina spray stain and then inked the edges with the Paradise Teal archival ink. And I really love not only how this tinted it, but that it also caused the vintage ink to blur. I mean, you got this very kind of watercolory, imperfect effect. Having said that, by the time we layer all the stuff in to make this a cluster, you're probably going to see almost none of the background, but we'll know it's there and we'll be happy about it. So yes, this is now, I'm really happy with how this is turning out. And I will be back. And again, the next thing we need to do is address the little jar as our sealed item, and then obviously make the cluster. And I will be back with that in the moment. Alrighty, I am back. And as you can see, I made my cluster. So I used some scraps of lace, a vintage ticket, one of those circles I had punched. Here's some of that drywall repair tape for the grid, added a tiny button, damaged button up there, some other scraps of vintage paper and ephemera to make my little cluster. And then I went ahead and I don't know, yeah, you probably can't see it, but I just stuck a couple of squares of cardboard stacked one on top of the other, so that it sits at about the height of, or just under the height of the jar lid. And you can still see some of that grid paper, ledger paper in the background, which I really like. And then here on the back, I picked a sentiment from one of the Tim Holtz snippets, word snippets. Her own familiar image tugged at her heart. And I just layered that. I layered it on some craft cardstock and then decided I was going to use cheesecloth, but it covered a lot of the background. And so I decided to use more since grid was one of the prompts um, of the drywall repair tape. And so I think that's pretty much it for the back. And then you'll see here, I found this just small piece of this light green ribbon, and I thought that worked with all the different sort of blues and greens going on here. So that's the hanger. So that's where we're at. So we've got everything now, all of our prompts for the week, except for something sealed. And so I wanted to work through that process with you together because this is a bit of an experiment. So here I took one of the little jars that we did that has the little cork top. And all I've done to it so far is I added one of these little eye hooks. I just screwed that into the cork. And so I realized when I was looking at the holes is that actually a bulb pin will fit perfectly in here. And so I have both black and then I have a rose gold bulb pin. And so my thought is, is that I can just use the bulb pin to hang, whoop, he says, sorry, I'm off camera for this, which probably is for the best because I'm not doing it very well. Okay. So yeah, so, and then we can have this hang from the bulb pin. So we could stop right there, but what I want to do is I want to have something in the little jar itself. And so I'm thinking of returning back to, again, this product that I used on my last make, which are these little micro packs of clay beads that come in. They get them when I order clothes online. And I've used them to make a sand and soil texture before. And so, but I'm wondering, and this is very much an experiment, I've never done this before, so we will see how it goes together. But I want to see if I can dye these to be the color, the same, this sort of the blue-green color that is the theme. Again, I have no idea if this will work. That may just like melt, disintegrate them or what, but we'll learn together. So I have a little plastic cup, and first thing I wanted to try was alcohol ink. So this is Stream alcohol ink, which is like a teal. And so I'm going to put a couple drops in of that. I know these are designed to absorb moisture, so that's just what makes me a little nervous about whether this will actually work. It does seem to be working though. I'm gonna definitely need more, which is fine. And I probably did not need the whole the whole container's worth either, but why not? And I think I like that it's giving different, you're getting different shades and variations. So you can see that. I'm going to keep going. I think I'd like it to be consistently this teal color, or at least mostly this teal color, maybe with some, light greens. But this is actually working a lot better than I thought it would, so that's exciting. And I think we're almost there. I'm going to add just a few more drops. Okay. And then normally I know you'd put this, or, I know when Tim Holtz sort of does this dyeing of things with alcohol ink is they'll turn it out on like a paper towel to dry. These are so fine and so small that I don't think I think if I dump them out onto anything that I will never get them back, basically, is that they will scatter away. And so, all right, so this is where we're at. And actually I think that looks pretty good. I don't mind the lighter sort of undyed bits. I think that adds some nice variation. And so I have this tiny little funnel. And now where did I put the jar? That is my question. Oh, here's the rose gold version. Hold please while I look for the jar. You were probably all yelling at me that it was right in front of me, but all right. So I've given this a moment to dry. It looks pretty loose. So I think we'll be good there. So I'm just going to pop the cork, put in my tiny, tiny little funnel. I'm sure this is still going to end up going everywhere, but we do the best we can. And try guiding it to minimize the going everywhere. Okay, that's working pretty well, actually. I don't want to jinx it, but I'm actually really surprised at how well this whole thing has gone for being a pure experiment. Okay, and I know I need to leave some room for the cork to go back in. And there we go. And so, and I chose the one label 41 because I will myself be turning 41 in just a few short months. So yeah, so that's going to be our little charm that hangs from the bottom of our jar lid. I might need to reinforce this with some glue, but we'll see how that goes. All right, and then I wish I had a gold bulb pin. I have in the past actually taken these black ones and used that same Inka Gold paste on them. I don't know if I want to do that. I might do that separately if I decide to. Yeah, and then hangs like this. So, and then here's the back. And so, let me clear out some of these things. I don't know. I'm still torn about whether I want to do the rose gold. I'm just worried it'll clash with the gold. Oh, and there is one more thing I want to do to this. So I was thinking about bringing in some of this stuff. Oh, and I have a little scratch I need to fix, but I can fix that easily. So I'm thinking about doing And I actually like the row of two that fills up pretty well. But I think I'll have to go with the hole in it. I'll have to go one half and one half. So I'm going to do that off camera and decide what I want to do about the bulb pin. And I will be back with the finished product. All right, I'm back and I am done. So since a couple of seconds ago, basically, so I did find in my stash, I found not quite gold, but an antique bronze bulb pin, which I liked better. So I swapped that out, and then I also swapped out the eye hook for an antique bronze version as well. And so here's our little something, our little bottle, and I really like how the variation in the color came in, and just have something cool in the bottle. And then yeah, I just went ahead and I ended up doing 2 rows of this trim all around, which I think just gives it something a little interesting on the edge. And then again, we've got our little string to our ribbon to hang it. And then again in the back, her own familiar image tugged at her heart. And so, yeah, so that is it for this week. So again, as a reminder, week 3 items were a cluster. I made a cluster as our focal point here to fill the jar lid. Something sealed, which I actually realized I probably could have just, the fact that this is a jar lid, probably could have counted for something sealed, but that's okay. We also have a sealed jar with a cork in it as our something sealed. And then a grid. We've got grid paper, grid ledger paper in the background. We've got some grid, and we've got grid drywall repair tape, both on the front and on the back. So we're double covered with the grid. And then item 4 was blue green, which lots and lots of blue green in this project. So yeah, I am really, really happy with this make, much happier than with last week's make. And actually have my first week's make here. You can put side by side. So I'm getting a little, soon I can decorate a very small Seek, Gather, Create holiday treat with my projects. But so, yeah, so thank you again for joining me this week. And I will see you back next week with the next week of the Seek, Gather, Create challenge. Thank you so much. Bye.